I'm so happy to be here. I can't really express my gratitude to Chris for inviting me and for making this happen. And it was awesome to follow Jed. He's a good friend and a good opener. Hopefully you guys will laugh more because he's awesome and I don't have to do as much work. So anyway, moving on. I'm AQ. I really didn't, when I saw the JSConf last call, it was like a call to arms for me to come and support Chris and Laura and everything they've done. And so I didn't know what to talk about. I haven't really written that much JavaScript in a while, even though I did a talk at Brooklyn JS recently. It was about Go, because I'm obviously an old person. So I didn't know exactly what to talk about, but I realized that the first talk I gave at JSConf was 5 years ago, or a little more than 5 years ago at JSConf 2010, and a lot in my life has happened since then, and I wanted to talk about that because I think I learned some things. So I'm going to try to teach all of you all the things that I learned in 5 years in about 40 minutes. Are you guys ready for that? Cool. So first, let's start with the basics. How to speak at JSConf 2010. So it all started, Jed was kind of mentioning this, there was a nascent JavaScript community in New York. In 2009, 2010, I was one of the organizers of NYCJS with a friend, Brian Mitchell, who sadly isn't here today, but he's an awesome person. And at NYCJS sometime in 2010, Chris Williams spoke. There were about 7 people there, which was awesome because that was the JavaScript community in New York then. We after the talk, Chris did a little talk. We went to this bar, as you do, called Ginger Man, and we had some beers. And I heard that JSConf was coming up. This is my first time meeting Chris. We went to this little back room. We started talking. I had some beers, and at that point I was working in JavaScript. I really wanted to talk at JSConf. I hadn't gone to 2009, which was the first year. 2010 was the second. I really wanted to talk, and so I was telling him about my framework and the things that I wanted to talk about, and he was like, no, you're not allowed to talk about a JavaScript framework. Your framework sucks. You're full of shit. Don't do that. And I was like, well, listen, I have other hobbies. What if I talk about bacon or how I make bacon myself? He's like, yes! He was like, basically, if you give a talk about bacon, I will make you the keynote presentation. And this was like a couple beers in. I didn't know if he was serious. I was like, oh, okay, cool, let's do it. And I was like, can I make bacon on stage? Is that a thing that we can do? And he was like, yeah, we'll figure it out with the hotel. We didn't actually get to make bacon on stage, but I did make a little video. This is me 5 years ago. You can still watch this video. It's pretty funny. Brian Mitchell made it. I looked so young and ambitious then. What happened? And yeah, I'm still making bacon. This was from a couple months ago. It's delicious. If you want to learn how to make bacon, watch that talk. But bacon is a gateway drug to many other things. So I want to tell you how to cure sausage. This is something I learned in the past couple years. So curing bacon is pretty simple. You take your bacon, if you want more detail, go watch the talk. You take a pork belly, you take salt, you take the special curing salt, and you take thyme, and you let it cure over around time, and then you add some smoke, and you have bacon, and it's delicious. It's really simple. The ingredients are so small that really anyone can do it at home. The smoke part is the only part that you might not be able to do in a Brooklyn kitchen, but if you're like me at that time, I had like a little kettle grill on a balcony, and I was able to do it and piss my neighbors off, and it was awesome. So sausage isn't that different. I was always really interested in the idea of sausage because it's like the next level from bacon. So I'm like always trying to level up. How do you cure sausage? So it's not that different. You can see there's only a couple different things. There's pork and salt and seasonings. And then the big difference is you have these friendly bacteria, and you have to have a specific temperature and humidity, and then time is the same. So the friendly bacteria, it's easy. You can order friendly bacteria on the internet, on Amazon.com. You get them and you add them to your sausage mix, and friendly bacteria are the bacteria that grow on the outside of sausage. You ever buy a sausage at a store and it's covered in white mold, and you're like, ooh, that's gross, it's white? Those white mold are good. They're good mold that's keeping away the bad mold that's black and green. If you see any black and green on it, don't eat it. First rule of sausage. And so if you But in order to get those bacteria to grow, you need a specific temperature and humidity. When you're curing bacon, you can just put it in the fridge. It doesn't matter. Top shelf, bottom shelf, it doesn't matter. With soppressata, which is one of my favorite types of Italian sausage, you need to keep the humidity around 80% or higher, and you need to keep the temperature in around 55 degrees, because that's where the friendly bacteria thrive. Anything out of that, and you might get those green and black ones, which you don't like. So how to make a Raspberry Pi in Node.js monitored sausage curing chamber. So obviously, as a programmer, that's the next thing that comes to mind, obviously, right? So you got your sausage, you got a little fridge, there's a Raspberry Pi on top, some wires dangling scarily into the fridge. And this is basically like a layout of how it works. You got your sausage. You have this thing called the DHT22, which is a temperature and humidity thing. You have a Raspberry Pi that can run Node.js, which is awesome. That sends these metrics to Heroku, which is a little app running on Heroku, and those metrics get sent to Librado. And if the temperature goes too high or too low, then you send a text message to yourself so you know to check your sausage. I have an app that's running. Unfortunately, my sausage fridge isn't running right now, so I don't have it running. And I realized I never took a screenshot of it in action, which is really, really sad. But this kind of follows the theme of what we've been talking about all day. This is the Internet of tasty things. And it's something I'm really interested in. At one point, I got really excited. I was like, I'm going to add a camera in there. And so this is what a camera in my sausage fridge looks like. You couldn't really do anything. I just got really excited about it. I had to scrap that project. But of course, once you get sausage thing and you realize that, oh, there's like some cool stuff going on here, you get more into this whole idea of how do you pickle things? Like, what does that process look like? And then you throw parties where you have like giant plates of pickles because your entire freezer and fridge is filled with pickles. And not even joking, that sausage fridge has now become a pickle fridge because I ran out of room in my fridge to store all my pickles. And pickling is actually what got me into making bacon and this whole thing, but it's gotten a little further. There you have some pastrami and some coppa and some soppressata and some duck prosciutto, which is amazing. Pickled corn. Who here's had pickled corn? It's so fucking good. It's amazing. Pickle yourself some corn. And the one thing I'll tell you is fermentation, you can get deep. And I did. I highly recommend this book called The Fermentation Bible by Sandor Katz. It's literally the size of a Bible, and it has everything you ever wanted to know about it. I just got this book that my wife is going to kill me. It's called How to Preserve the Japanese Way of Preserving. And I'm going to start making miso. Why not? Fish sauce is where my wife draws the line. Yeah. Fermentation is everywhere, so you start getting these ideas in your head about what fermentation is and what it can do. Because look at this. That looks kind of familiar, right? You have the same ingredients on the right side as bacon. It's just the ingredients in front of it are different. You have flour and water. And flour and water plus time, you start the starter and you start building it and you build it. And this miracle of two things combined, you have bread. You have this beautiful, beautiful bread. And I've been obsessed with bread for a long time. I'm pissing off all the gluten-free people and the vegans in the audience, but that's okay. You got to do it sometime. This bread was made with just those ingredients. It's so simple. Obviously, there's some sesame seeds on the left, just for taste. And so you get this idea in your head that you can take these two things and combine them and basically let nature take its course. And this is a really beautiful and, I don't know, to me it's almost like moving. Like, I'm really moved by fermentation and by bread because I know that sounds crazy, but it's like, it's the simplest thing and it's been going on since almost the beginning of time. Someone figured out that you combine these two things and they make something delicious. But even with that, with those two things, these simple ingredients, it takes years and years and centuries of practice to get to what we have today. And something about that is amazing, right? You take these very organic base ingredients and turn them into something special, but that making it something special is craft, right? And I'm not saying I'm amazing at it. I don't have that centuries of experience yet, but I'm trying to download everything I can and learn how to do this. So there are easier ways to get into this than the mastering the art of the sourdough, and that's pizza. Pizza is the most basic form of fermentation if you do it right. It's the same thing. You got your flour, you got your water, you got your yeast. You add yeast to kickstart it, and you have these beautiful balls of dough. And pizza is you add this extra thing, which is that people fucking love pizza. And people love eating it and people love sharing it. It's this communal food that gets people together and gets people excited about being with each other. It's my homeboy MRB, shout out. You get really into this thing of making pizza, or I get really into this thing of making pizza over 10 years, and you make a lot of pizzas, and you get really, really good at it, and it's awesome. Everyone likes you because you give them pizza. How easy is that? So from there, then you make so many pizzas, and what do? You have to write a book about it, obviously. And how do you write a book about pizza? Easy. You make a lot of pizza. So Mike and I have started on this journey, and we paired up with this amazing designer named Steve Berry, and we're making a book about making pizza. This has been my life for the past month, has been working on this book. It's beautiful. Here's a picture of it. We're raising money on Kickstarter. We tried to raise $28,000. We hit our goal in 6 days. Because people love pizza! It's an easy thing. And so I'm bragging, but I'm also just super excited about this because here's this little inkling of yeast and fermentation, and it turned into this thing that people have paid us $37,000 to do over the next couple months, which is just an incredible thing. So wait, I got to go back a little bit. That's the entire keynote effects for the entire presentation. You guys can all take a breath. Because in 2010, there was a lot of other stuff going on, and this is the part where I talk a little about JavaScript. So how do you make a client-side JavaScript framework? In 2009, there wasn't a lot of things about how to do that. I created this thing called Sammy.js, and it was awesome. It was a really fun project. This is my initial commit, Thursday, March 19th, 2009. You can see I am very verbose. And I was actually doing this at a conference. I was hanging out with my friend Blake Mizrahi, and Blake Mizrahi is the creator of Sinatra, and I was like, oh, I'm doing a lot of JavaScript these days. What if I take these ideas from Sinatra and brought them to the client-side web and built in JavaScript? Little did I know that that was like a thing that people hadn't really done, this idea of single-page apps. People were kind of playing with it and touching at it, but no one had built a tool to build them. And I think Chris saw that and didn't fully understand what I was talking about when I said JS framework. He thought I was like making another MooTools or something like that. But no, I was really excited about this idea that you could build applications with this simple tool, and you could make something really simple that people enjoyed programming in. And that was my goal. I really had fun, and that took off. A lot of people were using it. And then eventually other people liked that idea, and client-side apps became like a thing that everyone was doing, to the point there were 1,000 frameworks to do it, and that's exciting. So on to my next thing. So there's an easy answer to how to hate open source. Make a framework. So it turns out when you're starting out with open source, things are pretty groovy. These are all the GIFs I'm including in the presentation too. Jean-Claude Van Damme dancing is just too good. So you start out, you're making this thing, people are really excited about it, people are contributing, and then you get a pull request or an issue where the entire body of the issue basically is summarized by, this sucks, you're an idiot, leave the earth. And how do you respond to that? Okay, one of them you're like, okay, no, I think I'm cool. I'm staying here. Cool, thanks, bye. And then 2 of them, and then 100 of them, and then why doesn't your thing do the thing that Backbone does? Why doesn't your thing do the thing that Angular does? Why doesn't your thing, marry me and all these other things? So you get tired of it, and it's draining. I think Remy is talking about this tomorrow. I don't know if this GIF is going to play. It's also just too good. Oh, yeah, there we go. So So open source is awesome. It's this amazing thing, but I got really burned out really quickly because it's really hard to maintain a group of positive contributors. And I'm sure there are some people who are doing an amazing job at this, and I applaud them. I was not doing an amazing job. And there are reasons for that. I was doing other things. At that time, I was working at this company called Paperless Post, and I was growing a team. So Paperless Post was founded in 2009, and I started very early on. Paperless Post also sponsored JSConf 2012 in Scottsdale and did these awesome photos that you can see here. That's actually me on the bottom, but you can't tell without my glasses. My eyes are super beady. But that's Mike on the right. And so in 2015, this is what Paperless Post looks like. There are more than 1 million receivers every week. The revenue is in the tens of millions of dollars. There are more than 110 employees, and over 40 of those are developers and operations. And the office is across 2, but actually, I wrote this slide a while ago, and it's actually almost 3 now. They're building on a 3rd floor. But this is all just to say that in 2009, when I started working with them, there was $0, 0 receivers, 4 employees, 1 full-time dev, including myself and another consultant. And we were hanging out in this windowless office on 17th Street that was also a women's lingerie company where we just had 4 cubicles in the middle of it and then these posters of women's lingerie all around us. And it was the weirdest office I've ever worked at in my entire life. There were no windows. If it was raining, I had to text Mike and be like, is it raining? Which was a lesson in and of itself. So over the 6 years of doing this, I learned a lot, to say the least. I wanted to share some of those lessons with you, and these have nothing to do with sausage. This is hard because there's 6 years of this stuff that I learned. I'm trying to condense it down into like 4 minutes, so bear with me. One is you can learn by teaching. So learning by teaching is an interesting idea, but it's not just about mentoring. It's about really pushing yourself and challenging yourself to get as much information as you can out of other people by teaching them everything that you know. And this is like an osmosis type process. And being a teacher teaches you how to learn. Isn't that weird? It's a weird thing. And being a mentor makes you better at learning new things. And I highly recommend doing it if you've never done it before. Even if you're a junior developer, you can mentor someone on something. This is probably one of the most important things, which I didn't learn until after I stopped being a manager, which is seeking clarity and not transparency. When you're a manager or you're in a part of a team, everybody wants to, there was at least a couple years ago, and it's still going on, everyone wants transparency. We're a transparent organization. And transparency means that information is free, basically. Like, you can get any information you want. But information is useless without context. And when you're seeking transparency, what you're doing is you're trying to open up lines of communication, but if you're not clear about your intentions about that, no one's going to be motivated. No one's going to do anything. And so clarity and understanding why you're doing what you're doing is the most important. And that goes into this too, which is it doesn't really matter if you're building in the new framework or you're rewriting or doing whatever you're doing. If the organization that you're working with, you don't understand why you're doing the thing that you're doing, or your developers or your team doesn't, they'll never, ever, ever do the right thing. And that's simple. I mean, maybe they will, like monkeys in a typewriter, eventually do the right thing, but it's much easier to give them the context and the why to get them to do the thing you want them to do, or to get you to do the thing that they want you to do. This is one of my personal pet peeves and pet projects, is to get everyone on board with this idea. People are obsessed with rewriting everything and burning the world down and starting from scratch. And I hate that. It's like my #1 pet peeve. Because I really, truly believe that you can take almost anything, and really do it in an incremental way that benefits everyone. Because giant ideas are amorphous. They have no shape. People don't understand them. And if you can break something down into smaller chunks that people can actually understand, maybe they'll get it. Maybe they'll move forward. And finally, the most important thing is caring about people. Like, software is people. Like, I don't know how many times I've had to scream this to the clouds, but software is actually about people. Like, it doesn't matter what language you write in. JavaScript is cool, Go is cool, Ruby is cool, PHP is awesome, cool, it's great. It doesn't matter what language you're writing in if you can't communicate with another human being. And it doesn't matter if you're a manager, you're an employee. If you're a single person, you're like, I don't have to care about people, I'm just writing code. No, you have to communicate to your users who are people. And so everything that software touches is about people. So caring is hard, though. And how to care is really hard. People are basically these walking blobs that are just filled with emotions, including myself up here. I'm actually brimming with emotions right now. So figuring out how to deal with these emotional sacks is really, really, really hard. But guess what? Like everything you do and everything you learn, like making sausage or writing code, whatever it is, there's books about it. People have been doing this for a long time and can teach you. So trying to reinvent the wheel and being like, oh, we're going to try this completely new management strategy that I read about in Inc. magazine. Cool, that's great. But also, people have studied this field for a really long time and have some wisdom. Maybe it's kind of, some of it's BS, and that's great. But if you read a lot of it and process it and form opinions about it, then you can apply it to your own needs. So there's this really great book that was recommended to me once, and it sounds like bullshit. Everything about that, and you look at that book, what do you see? You see 2.0, there's a sticker on it that's sideways, you're like, that's bullshit. But it's a really good book, I highly recommend it. Forget the 2.0, it's just the revised edition, they just wanted to make it sound cool. But emotional intelligence is this other field of study. So people like think of IQ as like your intelligence about making rational decisions and doing stuff like that and solving math problems. Emotional intelligence they call EQ, and that's the other side of things because people are like complete sacks of emotions. And so it doesn't matter how smart you are, what these people who have gone to Harvard and done smart things have figured out is that people who are actually emotionally intelligent and can do these things and navigate complex situations with people are actually way more successful money-wise, career-wise, family-wise than anyone who doesn't. Like you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you're a total dick, you're not gonna succeed. And Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and all these people who are praised for their like being a DB, basically. I don't know why I said dick and then said DB, but anyway. They're like outliers, right? They're people who like try to buck this, but people like praise them and put them on pedestals. But really, we should be praising everyone else who's doing a really good job and being successful. So EQ basically breaks down to this. I could do like a 90-hour talk about this, but I won't. But there are 4 quadrants, and mainly the basic idea is being aware of who you are in the world and being aware of the people that are around you. That's what it all breaks down to. And if you can be aware of your own emotions and how they affect other people and how other people's emotions might affect you, then you're on the path to being successful, basically. So like if you're in a meeting and someone shoots down your idea and literally fire starts shooting out of your ears, you're not a very emotionally intelligent person, basically, is the bottom line. People understand that, see that emotion steaming off of you and know that you're about to flip out at them, and they might be like, oh, okay. Or if you're walking around an office and your boss just starts yelling at people, that person is not very emotionally intelligent. It's not just about anger, it's about repressing feelings and everything like that too. But read this book, it's really good. You'll get a lot out of it. It'll take you about 25 minutes to read. So you care a lot and you're doing this thing, and then how do you burn out? Well, it's easy. You actually care about things. When you care about things a lot and you work really hard, you end up putting everything in this basket of this golden thing that's going to float to the heavens and be the savior of all mankind. And in fact, actually, when you do that, you risk a lot. And when you risk a lot, you fail sometimes. And so I got to this place about September 2013 where I was like, this is not really, something's wrong with me. I'm like not sleeping very well. I can't really focus at work. So I was like, okay, well, we need to like rearrange the whole team, and I did a whole team reorg, and that helped a little bit. At that point, I was like managing like 40 people, and that was hard. And so I managed a couple less people. That helped a little bit, but it still wasn't perfect. And in January of 2014, I was like, okay, I got to make a change. And so I talked to my leaders, the other leaders of the paperless team, and I was like, look, I gotta do something else. This is not working anymore. They were like, okay, well, stick around, help us hire the next CTO, you'll do it. And over the course of a year and a half, where I was helping out in transition, things just kind of got worse and worse to the point where I was like just not happy and kind of making a mess of things. And that wasn't it. Burning out wasn't just about caring, it was about a lot of other things. So in September 2013, I had a kid. I'm not going to go through the details of that whole thing. But here he is. He was running around earlier. I don't know if you saw him. His name is Magnus. He's really cute. That's him in a chef's outfit with me in my chef's outfit on his first Halloween. That's him in our local farmer's market. He's the king of the farmer's market. He literally walks up to people and asks for treats, and they give him treats at the farmer's market. It's amazing. So having a kid is like this crazy thing that I always wanted to be a dad, but I wasn't really prepared for it, I think, emotionally, especially because I was working so hard. It was crazy. And because having a kid is a lot of work. And what I didn't realize is like not only how much work it was going to be, but how much I wanted to invest in that little human being. And so your mission as a parent, I learned very quickly, was you have this human being, and your job for as long as possible is to make them believe that the world is an awesome place, right? Which is really, really, really hard, right? It's really hard because the world is not an awesome place. Well, it can be, but for the most part, it's not, especially these days. It's really hard. So I was putting, in September 2013, you might notice that might have aligned when I started to burn out, because I had these 40 people that I was managing, and I kind of thought of them as, my children. And then I thought of my actual child. I was like, wait, I have to decide between my children and this actual human being that I actually care about, because I was a part of his birth, and I'm responsible for him for the rest of my life at least. So making that choice sucks. How many people in this room have had to make that choice between their child and their work? Right? I mean, it's a horrible, heart-wrenching thing, and I hope all of you someday get a chance to do it, because it's heart-wrenching and it's hard, but it's also a very important thing, at least for me. So obviously, if I wanted to make things awesome, what am I going to do? So I had to completely rearrange my life so that they would have a better life than me. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And sorry, I had to do that. And I'm legally obligated to do that as coming from Brooklyn. I don't know if all of you knew that. So my parents worked really hard, and I learned working hard from them. They worked every hour. I was raised by a nanny, basically. And I didn't see them that often. And now my mom, this is a picture of my dad and I at Disney World. I'm actually taking Magnus to Disney World on Monday. Woo! That's me scared shitless of Goofy. And my mom, when my wife was pregnant with my son, my mom's favorite thing to do was to look at her, look at me, look at her, look at me, and say, Aaron, we did a really bad job with you. And, she's a Jewish mom. She didn't intend to say it in that way that sounds really horrible. What she actually meant was that she wished that she was able to give me the life that I'm trying to give my son, which is when you say it that way, it sounds much better. So we left the city and we moved to this place called Kingston, New York. And Kingston, I'm actually illegally obligated to say Kingston like that too. So Kingston, New York, I'm not going to talk that much about it, but Kingston, New York was the first capital of New York State. It's one of the oldest towns in America. This historic reenactment happened a couple months ago around the corner from my house. The best part about this was this redcoat leaned against a minivan and set off the car alarm, which I thought was like the funniest thing ever. But there was an actual cannon rolling down the street. It's to celebrate the burning of Kingston. My wife and I, which happened in October 1970, and we came up, we went to Kingston just to visit, and we saw this house. And this house is also known as the Van Kuren House. It's a pretty house, it's old, and when we saw it, it looked like this. It was actually basically staged like a museum. And it was on the market. It had been on the market for 4 years. And for some reason, my wife and I were like, yeah, this is our house. And so we bought this house. It was built in 1680. And the last renovation was in 1932. And we're the third family to own this house. And I'm very proud of this. And it's cool because I could talk about this a lot too. But most of my personal family history was destroyed between World War II and the pogroms in Russia in the late 1900s. Because I'm from a Jewish background. Jews don't have a good, we don't have a good track record with history. So we, all of the records of where my family was from in Eastern Europe are basically destroyed. So I realized that I could buy this house and buy America, buy American history. I am now like part of American history, and now I have this history. Unfortunately, that awesome portrait didn't come with the house, so they sold all the things, and we spent like 8 months renovating this house. But the whole point was to have space and to have time so that I could be with my son. And I'm happy to say that for sure has happened. My wife hated putting that photo in, but I thought it was hilarious. He said, "Dada, I'm working," and I thought that was hilarious. So I want to talk about this. I don't actually know the story. I don't actually know how to do this, except I feel like I'm on the right track, right? So the first thing is, hey, completely rearrange your life for a child. That's an easy thing to do, right? No, but really, this book, hey, what do you know? Emotional intelligence and figuring out how to be an emotional person and how to share those emotions and read emotions off of other people actually turns out to be really interesting and proves very valuable as a parent. Because being a parent and a manager, there aren't that many differences. Developers kind of act like children most of the time. And it's all about understanding what emotions are. And when you have a child and a little boy, especially, I'm guessing, I don't know what having a little girl is like, he just like breathes emotions. That's all he does. It's like he doesn't, especially when he was young, he didn't know how to talk. All he could do was like emote at us. And so learning how to like balance our own emotions, which I'm not saying I'm like 100% good at this. I still yell all the time and get angry because, as you can tell, I'm a very passionate and emotional person and I wave my hands a lot. And sometimes it's because I burn a pizza or because I do something stupid like stubbing my toe, which Magnus actually thinks is the most hilarious thing ever. Just learning how to adapt and understand other people's emotions is really important. And teaching him and trying to teach him what I do and trying to be present is my goal, right? I'm trying as hard as I can to be present. And that's really, really hard. In our world, we're surrounded by things that are trying to have us be present for them and our devices and everything, as opposed to the people around us. It's really, really hard to be present. And this is him doing an impression of me, literally, like he's like, I'm working just like Dada, and he goes like this. And that's probably what I look like, and sometimes, actually, I have a video of this, I should have put it, he's like, da, da, just but there's nothing on the screen. it was completely off, but he knows that that's what it looks like when Dada's working. Anyway, so, but moving away actually hurt some things too. I had some really good friends in New York. I had some people that I loved, and especially this guy named Mike Bernstein, who's like my best friend, and we would see each other almost every week when we were in New York. We worked together for a couple of years, and it was really hard to be away. He actually moved to DC too, so neither of us were in Brooklyn, so we couldn't figure out how were we gonna like be the same friends. And we came up with a solution, which was making a podcast. This is the stupidest solution to this problem ever, but it worked. It's called Beats, Rye, and Types. We've done 40 episodes now, and it's about music, food, and programming. It's the Beats, Rye, and Types, and those are our 3 interests. And it was basically just a gag for us to be able to talk at least once a week for an hour. And it's turned into something that other people actually like, which is cool. I don't know why. I guess we giggle so much that it's contagious, I think, is the idea. So out of that came the pizza book. A pizza book that I was talking about before is a project of Beats Writing Types. It's the two of us wanting to do more things together. We realized that the podcast was good, but why can't we just only work with each other and do awesome things and do things that we actually care about? We're both programmers. We both do programming things or consulting or whatever it is I do these days. But we realized that we're actually passionate, as you can tell, about other things. And so we wanted to share that passion. And the same thing, this collaboration, this work with this other person, it's about people. That's all this is. The pizza book is great. It's a great fulcrum for this energy, but all it is us wanting to be human beings together. And so out of that, I got really excited. I was like, how do I do more human being things? And I was like, okay, I'm in the Catskills, I'm in this beautiful place. How do I want to run a conference? And I met some awesome people who also had this idea to run a tech conference in the middle of the woods. And so we got together and we did it. And how do you run a conference? Well, it's easy. You just think, what would Chris and Laura Williams do? And that's basically how we did it. We were like, okay, well, there should be booze, there should be music, there should be non-alcoholic drinks, there should be really good food, there should be dancing if possible, whatever we can throw and cram into this weekend, let's do it. So we ran this thing called JSConf. It was in October. John Riesig spoke at it, so we were going to be successful. But it was awesome. It was we got this group of about 120 people together to forage, to do blacksmithing, to make bookbinding, to listen to some awesome talks. We got everyone to square dance, which was a pretty amazing feat, I think. And we tried to run this thing without any pretension, just shove people into the woods, into this beautiful nature, and get them excited about the world around them and the people around them. And out of this, what I realized is that collaboration in itself and working with other people is actually a medium for creativity. Not the thing you create, but working with other people is a way of being creative. And that got me really excited. How do you work with other people? How do you make it so that how do you maximize the amount of time that you can be creative and collaborate? Because programming is creative, but it's also it's creative in a certain way. It's inherently creative. But in order to actually make it truly creative, you have to work a lot at it. And same thing with anything you do, I think. So my mission right now, which I don't necessarily have the answer for, is how do you do the least amount of things to make enough money to do all the things you want? And I kind of circumnavigated this idea and came back around to it through my whole life, because I never really wanted to work 90 hours a week, but I really thought that that was going to land me in a position where I would have enough money to do all the things that I want. Turns out that there are easier ways to get to that end result. You don't have to work 100 hours a week to make exactly enough money you want to do the things you want. Maybe you work 20 hours a week. Maybe you work 100 hours a week some weeks and not other weeks. And obviously, I'm in a very lucky position to do this, and I can't just say, everyone, just go out and quit your jobs. But all I'm saying is to think about your choices when you're going into this, because the idea of a startup and the idea of this golden egg at the end of this thing, most of the time it's not there. It's just not. And so maximizing the amount of time you can spend and doing the things that you actually care about now instead of 60 years from now when you retire, or whatever it is, that's actually probably what you want to be doing. And so that's been my focus, is try to solve this problem. And I don't have the solution, I'm sorry. But I know that if you focus on the trajectory, how you're getting there, as opposed to the money, the pile of money that you're going to Scrooge McDuck into, that you can actually do the things you want. Maybe it's not a pile, maybe it's just a dusting of cash that you can kick around with your feet, and that's enough to get you through the week, Maybe that's all you need. And so my final thoughts is that you can learn how to do anything. I want everyone to walk away with this, feeling this. I didn't know anything about making sausage or bacon 10 years ago, and yeah, maybe that's not the hardest thing. It's not building a rocket, but I bet if I worked really hard, maybe I could build a rocket. Don't quote me on that. But There's a lot of books out there about building rockets, right? I'm sure I could figure it out. But there's a lot of stuff. So please, you can learn how to do anything. And finally, these things. Find awesome people to do things with. Make things you actually love and just fuck everything else because they don't matter, right? If you can focus on these things and do it, you'll be happy, or maybe you will. Hopefully you'll be happy. I think I'm focusing on this, I'm trying, and I think I'm about 10x happier than I was in JSConf 2012 when I was kind of moping around the pool, kicking rocks like fucking peanuts. So I think I can tell you honestly that if you try and you make things that are awesome and you use the inherent creativity that is in all of you and you focus that energy into a beam and shoot it at something, that something will be awesome. So thanks, I'm Aaron Quint. Here's some websites. Thank you.